Number 1A says to write an equation for the function that can be used to find the total area of the walls of a cube-shaped playhouse if each side is x feet long. Okay, so it helps if you try to visualize this playhouse. If you have a cube playhouse, each wall is a square, right? Because isn't a cube made up of 6 squares, basically? Okay, so this is just one wall of the playhouse. How many walls will there be? 4. There's going to be 4 of these, right? Now, they tell you that each side, so each wall, is x feet long. So like that side is x feet long, that side is x feet long, that side is x feet long, and that side is x feet long. Okay, this is one wall of the playhouse, but there are 4 total walls in this playhouse. How do you find the area of one of the walls? How do you find the area of a square? Right, which, you know, in middle school they evidently just kept teaching y'all length times width, but when you do length times width of a square, it's x times x, which is x squared, right? So it's going to be x squared, but you got to keep in mind, that's just for one wall. We have 4 walls in this playhouse, so you multiply that by 4. And then you equal it to function notation, so f of x equals. Now that you have your function created, you can use it to answer 1b, which y'all didn't have to do for homework, but we're going to do it now. Alright, 1b. Use the function from exercise 1a to determine the total area of the walls of a cube-shaped playhouse if each side is 5 feet long. Well, over here, didn't we represent each side with x? So now if they tell you each side is 5, doesn't that mean we just plug in 5 for the x? So we're about to find out the area of all of the walls if each wall has a side length of 5. So 4 times 5 squared equals 100. 5 squared is 25, not 10. And when you multiply 25 by 4, you get 100. So 100 square feet. Now, what if they would have wanted, just remember you got to do order of operations, exponents first. What if they had wanted you to do like all 4 walls and the ceiling and floor? What would have been different about this formula? Right, this would have been a 6, because the floor and the ceiling would have been 2 more, so you would have multiplied it by 6 to find the area of the entire cube. Okay? 2a, write an equation for the function that can be used to find the number of granola bars in B boxes if each box contains 8 granola bars. So for every one of these problems, they tell you the variable they want you to use. What variable did they tell you to use? B for bars. So that means B has to go in parentheses on this side, and B is going to be somewhere over here. Now, this letter doesn't matter. You could use F every single time if you wanted to. I just chose to put G for granola bars. But that letter doesn't really matter. It's whatever you want it to be. This letter represents the unknown, and aren't we trying to figure out, the number of granola bars in B boxes? So that's why we use B for boxes. Now they tell us each box contains 8 bars. So what do? If each box has 8 bars in it, what operation will tell you? Multiplication. Wouldn't you say one box has 8 bars, so 8 bars per box, and per is multiplication? I mean, think about it. You got to think about it like with a real life example. If you're trying to feed snacks to a bunch of kids, and you know that you have 56 kids, and you know each box has 8 bars, aren't you just going to do 8 times 7, so you'll know you need 7 boxes? You got to think about it with a real life scenario, and that'll help you learn how to create the function. So over here it says use the function from exercise 2a to determine the number of granola bars in 6 boxes. So that means replace what with what? Right. The B gets replaced with 6. So it'll end up being 8 times 6, which is 48 bars. Okay? If each box has 8 and you have 6 boxes, you have 48 granola bars, right? Write an equation for the function that can be used to find the number of buses needed if n students go on a field trip. Each bus can carry 32 students. Okay, what variable did they tell you to use? N. And N represents students. Okay, so N is going to be on this side, and it's going to be on this side. Remember, this letter is not really important. You can choose whatever you want. What do you want? For field trip? Okay. So on the field trip, we have N amount of students going, but we know that each bus carries 32, so we want to know a function that represents how many buses we need. Now, I know that this one gives you a little more trouble than the previous one, so why don't we go ahead and try it as a real example. If you have 100 students standing out in the bus lanes, and you know you can get 32 of them on a bus, what would you do to figure out how many buses you need? Divide it by 32. So shouldn't you do N divided by 32, your total number of students divided by 32? So see how sometimes it's easy to consider with a real situation what you would do, and that'll help you think back to the function? Yes? That's what I put, N over 32. Okay, so F of 100, because 100 students goes in the N place, equals 100 over 32. What is 100 over 32? 3.125. So how many buses do we really need? 4. Because if you only park 3 buses out there, how many students are they going to hold? 96. Because 3 times 32 is 96, and that would leave 4 students without a seat, right? Now, well, 4A. Lizzie read the first 30 pages of a novel on vacation. When she returned home, she read 10 pages every day. Write a function that can be used to find the total number of pages Lizzie has read after being home for X days. So what's the variable they're telling you to use? X. So X has to go over here, and that means X will be somewhere over here, correct? What letter do y'all want to use here? P for pages? F for what? But I want you to understand that when you see something other than f of x on the test, don't freak out. It's the same thing. Okay, now, say that you're having a hard time writing the function, because this is the harder part for y'all. This is the easy part for y'all. Okay, so here's the scenario. She read 30 pages on vacation, and once she's home, she reads 10 a day. So if she's been home for 60 days, how many total pages has she read? 90. What did y'all do in your heads to get that? Okay, but where did the 60 come from? 10 pages a day for 6 days plus the 30 she read on vacation. That's what you did in your head, right? So as a function, wouldn't that be 10x plus 30? We just plug the 6 in the x place once we knew 6 days. So over here you put P of 6 because you're plugging in 6 for 6 days. All right, 5A. Roxy borrowed $190 from her aunt to buy a new DVD player. Each month, she pays her aunt $15. Write a function that can be used to find the amount of money Roxy owes her aunt after X months. So what variable did they tell you to use? X for months. What letter do you want to use here? For money, okay? And since X is what's in parentheses, that's the variable for our unknown. X is going to be over here also, right? Okay, say you're having a hard time creating this function. If she's been paying her aunt back for 1 year, how would you figure out how much she still owes her aunt? Okay, where did the 12 come from? Right, because even though they said 1 year, our X is in months. So you got to convert that 1 year to 12 months. So that's how much she's been paying for 12 months. What would you have to do, though, to see how much more she owes? Subtract it from 190, right? And how much does she owe? $10. So didn't we start with 190, what she borrowed, and then each month we're subtracting $15 a month? So F, or no, not F, M this time. M of 12, because we had to convert 1 year to 12 months, equals that. Does that make sense? Are these starting to get a little easier? Oh, really? Okay, now I want you to try 6A, 6B, 7A, and 7B. Just those four. The others are different. I'm going to have to teach you before these. So try those four. 6A, write a function to show the number of blank pages remaining in a 150-page notebook after P pages have been used. Okay, what variable are they telling you to use for pages? P. So what letter would you like this to be? For blank? Okay, so blank pages, even though that's really the same thing. I used N for notebook. In a notebook, there are blank pages. Because you see what I mean? Blank and pages are talking about the exact same thing. Now, if you're having trouble thinking of how to write the function, read this. How would you determine the number of blank pages remaining after you've used 12 of them? If you start out with 150 pages and you use 12, don't you just do 150 minus 12 to figure out how many you have left? So isn't that 150 minus P? So N of 12 equals, there's the equals, 150 minus 12, so how many pages are left? 138. Alright, 7A. At a basketball camp, 165 players wait to be assigned to teams of 5. Write a function to show the number of players remaining after T teams have been assigned. What variable did they tell you to use? T for teams. So that means T is going to also be somewhere over here. What letter do you want to use to represent the scenario? F? Okay. Alright, so let's think about this scenario. If you're having trouble thinking about the function, consider if they've already made 7 teams. So if you have 165 players, and you're putting them in teams of 5, and you've made 7 teams, how would you set that up to see how many players are still standing around waiting to be assigned? 165 divided by 5 will tell you how many total teams you can make, which would be 33. Okay, so if you're trying to make, your variable would be plugged in, would be 7, right? And there's 5 players per team, but then what would you do with that to figure out how many players are still left? Subtract it from how many players you started with. Okay, because you started with 165 people standing there, but you're taking them away 5 players at a time for the team. So that would be 165 minus 5T. So P of 7 equals what? 130. Because 165 minus 35 is 130. Okay, turn back to page 38 now. Set 2. No. These are different. I'm about to teach new stuff. Yeah, I think these are easier too. Yeah. Just watch. The amount of money Hogan's plumbers charge for a house call can be described by linear functions. So they've given you your first hint. Your answer is going to be in what form? Which is y equals mx plus b. That's what your answer is going to look like, because it's a linear function. The charge for a 1-hour job is $85. The charge for a 2-hour job is $125. Write the equation for the function and use the function to find the cost of a 3-hour job. So, don't we kind of, to be able to know the cost for a 3-hour job, don't we kind of have to know like what their hourly rate is? Well, you can do that by creating ordered pairs. A 1-hour job is $85, and a 2-hour job is $125. So most of you will be able to look at this and tell me the rate right away. Who can already tell me the hourly rate? $40 an hour. But if you're not able to just see it like that, what you've probably never heard is that rate is the same thing as slope. It can be calculated with the slope formula. So m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Well, what is your y2? That's your y1. And then minus over 2 minus 1. And so doesn't that give you 40 over 1, which is just 40? So now we already know part of our answer. We know that in our answer, the m is 40. So the only other part that we have to find is the b. Yesterday on the video, they showed you how to do this. You take your linear function. Okay, watch. I'll give you time to copy after. Just watch. We just found out what the m is. It's 40. And then up here, don't we have an x and a y value and another x and a y value? So you can choose which one you want to work with. Which point do you want to work with? Okay, so if you're going to work with this point, 85 is the y. So can't we plug it in for y? And that means 1 is the x. So we're going to plug it in for x. And now, doesn't that become 40? So 85 equals 40 plus b. And now to solve for b, what will we do? Subtract 40 on both sides. So b equals 45. So let's talk about this scenario really quickly. If they charge $40 an hour, why would a 1-hour job cost $85? Let me say that again. I didn't hear you, sorry. If it's 40 bucks an hour, why is a 1-hour job $85? Yeah, or maybe like parts. You know what I mean? Okay, so now that we have that, can't we find out what a 3-hour job is? So we need to change this to function notation. So f of x equals, and then over here we'll do f of 3 because we're trying to find out a 3-hour job. And what would a 3-hour job cost? $165. Oops, I forgot the 1. Because 40 times 3 is 120. 120 plus 45 is 165. Okay, so now let's try the next one. Oh, sorry. Alright, scuba divers can use a linear function. So right away, they're letting you know your answer is going to be in y equals mx plus b form. But since we're doing function notation, we'll do f of x equals mx plus b. So don't we just need to fill in the m and the b to have the answer? Okay, well, don't you always find the m by doing y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1? So, to be able to use that formula, don't we need a x1, y1, and an x2, y2, which is 2 points? We're going to create these 2 points from the given information. Scuba divers can use a linear function to determine their depth using the water pressure. If the water pressure is 2 atmospheres, the depth of the ocean is 33 feet. If the water pressure is 3 atmospheres, the depth of the ocean is 66 feet. Use a linear function, so use y equals mx plus b form, to find the depth of the water if the water pressure is 5 atmospheres. Okay, so what do I plug in for y2? Minus what do I plug in for y1? Over what do I plug in for x2? And then 2, yes. So what will that become? Over, which is just 33 for your slope, right? Okay, once you've found your slope, how do you find your b? Remember, y equals mx plus b. It's a linear function. That's what we're using. We just found out the m is 33. And don't we have an x and a y right here? We have one right here too, but you can choose whichever one you want to work with. I normally just choose the smaller one. So if x is 2, it would go right here. Y is 33, so it goes here. So now you have every single letter plugged in for except for b. And so what does this become? 33 equals 66 plus b. And now to solve for b, what do you do? Minus 66. And so b equals negative 33. So your b is negative 33. Okay, now we can use that to figure out the water, or the depth of the water if the water pressure is at 5 atmospheres. So F of 5 equals what? 33 times 5 minus 33 though. 132. Okay, so they're 132 feet deep if the atmosphere is 5 atmospheres. Okay, turn to the next page. And the next page, yes. Okay, number 8, I want to give y'all a little hint, because just because 38 comes first in the sentence does not mean 38 is automatically your x value. X values are independent variables. Y values are dependent variables. So in a scenario where it costs $38 to produce 10 cakes, what depends on what? Doesn't the cost depend on how many cakes are made? So cost is dependent. It goes in the y place of the point. And then the cakes you make are independent. Does that make sense? Your dependent variable always is the y. So what's the next ordered pair going to be? 15 and 53. So if we're trying to ultimately figure out the cost of making 22 cakes, don't we kind of need to figure out the cost per cake? And you can do that by doing the slope of these points. So M equals what? Over. And so what is your M? Which is 3. Okay, so it must cost $3 per cake. However, there must be an extra charge, because think about it. If it's $3 per cake, why in the world would it be $38 for 10 cakes? Wouldn't that only need to be 30? So isn't there an $8 charge? No, 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 no. When you do the slope, you get 3. Okay? But think about it. No, it's a $3 charge per cake. Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying now. But think about it. If 10 cakes ended up costing $38, isn't there an extra 8 in there? So your y-intercept must be 8. Now, let's talk about mathematically how you would get that. Y equals mx plus b. Pay attention. We can use one of these points. Which one do you want to use? Okay, so 10 goes in the x place. 38 goes in the y place. We already found out the m was 3. So now to solve for b, what do I do? Right, that becomes 30. And 38 minus 30 is 8. So we already kind of had figured that out. And think about it. If cakes are $3 each, how much should 15 cakes really cost? 45, right? But they ended up being 53 because this is some kind of $8 charge. Okay? Alright, so in 8b, they want you to use the function from exercise 8b to determine, or 8a, that's a typo, that should say A, to find the cost of producing 22 heart-shaped cakes. So F of 22 equals what? How much would 22 cakes make if they're $3 each and then there's an $8 charge? $74. Because the $3 per cake, that would be 66 bucks, but then when you add on the $8 charge for whatever they're charging that for, that brings it up to 74.
It's like making
For 200 miles would be how much money? $59.95. Okay, try that one this weekend.